Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on April 19th, 2022 at approximately 6:31 a.m. PST. Well, we're back looking at the way that okay, that came out well. We're back looking at the heart, at your home. How do you get it running? Now, the neat part about yesterday. Okay, we spent a lot of time on the computer yesterday, but it was going through old files and deleting the ones that we no longer require. Okay, it's very much like going through your mental state. I mentioned this issue that when we compare your home and your house essentially to the vehicle, to the body, and you personally to the cerebral cortex, there is work to be done there as well. And what I mean by that is take a look at the way you're looking at the world. Take a look at the way you're interacting with it and ask yourself, are you hanging on to old precepts, old concepts that no longer serve you well? The same thing applies with a computer. Okay, I've got a staggering amount of files that I do not require anymore. They are very cluttered, so much like I'm organizing the rest of my house. I'm also going through the computer now and organizing the files I've got into a functional fashion. Okay, and some of these files, it turns out, are from back in 2008. Is the oldest in 2000? No, I think 2007. But you get the idea. And the reality behind it is this: if you're hanging on to old concepts, if you're still living your life based on concepts that no longer apply, it's time to put them to rest. Now, this applies across the board. It's not just a question of whether or not they're working for you. It's a question of, are they actually holding you back? Now, I've got the same complications you do in a lot of ways. Okay, I've been hurt in past relationships, and therefore, I'm still carrying baggage with it. But the key to it is acknowledging what that baggage is, and then looking at getting rid of it, correcting it. Now, you can't alter the fact that whatever brought you to where you are today, there is no functional way to alter the fact it happened. You can, however, find ways to cope with it. And the majority of that is done by focusing on the here and now and taking a look at your current behavior and taking responsibility for it. Now, there's no question that things have happened in the past that you wouldn't do today. I mean, the most obvious example is pretty much every kid I've ever met at one point or another was in diapers and didn't know how to use a toilet. Okay. Now, this is a point that obviously most people look at going, I don't desire to go back to that. Okay, and we're taught that as you get older, that will be an issue. You may end up back there. And it is possible. But are we going to dwell on the fact that is a possibility? Or are we going to do what we can to compensate for it, knowing that it's a possibility? Myself, I personally like the idea of compensating for it. Now, there are certain times, like I was told it's going to take a couple of days to do the blood work. Well, it's too late for me to do that. My doctor's appointment, which I'm not going to, is to take place tomorrow. I'm not going. Why? Because I figured out how to cope with it. Now, this might be kind of like closing the barn door after the horse left. If I end up in the hospital for whatever reason. But right now, the doctors have this brilliant idea. They know exactly what they're doing with my system, and yet they keep screwing it up. Now, am I going to turn around and say all doctors are useless? Absolutely not. There's a staggering number of really qualified doctors. Problem is that I'm an anomaly. Now, when you're looking at your mind and you're looking at the concepts you're living by, you can certainly take a look at your childhood and go, I grew up in an abusive home. That's why I'm treating people the way I am. And it's a viable excuse and people buy it all the time. And I will not argue the point that what you went through as a child has the impact on what you're going through, on how you're behaving today. However, it's up to you whether you continue behaving that way. I had a client years ago that was a clinical multiple personality. And when I talk about her being clinical, I mean she would switch gears completely. Okay, mannerisms, speech patterns, vocal tones, language and language usage, the whole 9 yards would shift gears. Okay. She was also a violently vindictive. She was a violently vindictive kleptomaniac. Okay. Now, these were just the way she was. It was because the way she grew up was an extremely abusive home. Okay. Where her father had done things to her that nobody should ever do to anybody. So what ended up happening? Okay. She come to me, and I was warned she was a problem child to start with. So I let her ramble on for about a minute and a half, and I cut her off, and I said, "Okay, I've heard enough." She goes, "But," I said, "I don't care. It's not really I don't care, but it was counterproductive." And I up one side of her and down the other, and I says, "Look, I won't argue the fact that you've had a rough life, and that the first 40 years of your life may well be an absolute shambles. However, that being said, it's now up to you whether you're going to continue living your life in a shambles and continue blaming other people, or are you going to take responsibility for your current actions in spite of what you've been through? Are you going to make the effort to turn your own life around?" I says, "I will guide you through it. There's no problem there. Just like I'm telling you, I will guide you through it." Well, this particular young lass decided to work on her own complications. Okay, by the end of about a year of working with her, I ended up working with her twice a week. Right, twice a week for about a year, roughly. And by the time she was done, because when I met her, she was living on the street. Okay, but she was surviving by ripping people off. By the time we got done with her, we had managed we never cured the multiple personality. But what we did do is find a way to cope with it. Okay, because we turned around and we said, okay, the primary personality was a nice enough lady. Okay, bit of a kleptomaniac, but she was a nice lady. Okay, then she had the child that was only like 5 years old. And the 5-year-old loved fingerprint painting. And then she had a really violent older teenager. Absolutely violent. Okay, and what we ended up doing, because the poor primary would run into a problem. She'd get up in the morning and there would be ketchup and mustard all over the table. Well, it's because the little 5-year-old liked finger painting and that was the only paint she could get. Right. So what we turned around and did was we got her to pick up some finger paints for the little protege. Okay, got her to pick up some finger paints so she could play with them. Right, and we got her enrolled at a gym once a week for training in the MMA. Okay, yeah, for mixed martial arts training. I doubt very much she ever went professional because that would have been a disaster. But by getting her that physical outlet, she managed to keep her anger in check. Okay, and by getting the finger paints, she stopped having to replace her ketchup and mustard. Besides that, mustard stains terribly. Actually, in all fairness, it stains really well. But she had a choice. She could continue blaming everybody else. Okay, oh yeah, and the ultimate point was she used to rip people off. She'd walk by them and lift their wallet. Right. And this one day, she phoned me up. The last time I ever spoke to her, she was absolutely ecstatic. She had gotten into subsidized housing. She had a part-time job. She had a little bit of volunteer work. And the thing that got her to call me was she had been by the bus. And a guy got up and got on the bus and accidentally left his wallet behind. So she picks up the wallet and chased the bus for 2 blocks until the guy got off. And she hands him back his wallet. Well, needless to say, he opened his wallet and was shocked to find everything still there, including the $20 bill. Right. And he turned around, he opened it up, and he thanked her profusely and says, look, I'd give you more if I had more. If I had more cash, you'd get all of it. But he goes, take the 20 and thank you so much. It was a real godsend. Well, that was a major turning point for her. She broke that issue on her own of theft. Okay, because of the guidance that we've been working with. And she told us in this herself, that because of the tolerance we had for her attitude, for her misalignments, that she was able to find a way to actually correct that one on her own. And that gave her dominant control over her own life. This does not mean that she didn't have MPD anymore, or DID, I think it's called now. But it does mean that she figured out how to actually control it and how to cope with it. And a lot of the times when we're dealing with old fears, with old programming, a lot of the time it's a question of finding coping mechanisms. Okay, for me, I suffer from PTSD triggered by the hospital and the dentist. Now, I haven't figured out how to cope with them, and of course, the reality behind it is my immune system is such that it's not just a question of coping with a dentist. It's a question of figuring out how to get out of my own way so that the Novocaine or whatever they use nowadays works. Okay, that's the reality behind it, and I don't know how I'm going to deal with that yet. Still something I'm working on. Kind of like I got up this morning, and here I am striving to get my body working properly, get everything running in the right direction, and I end up with an energy flux. Okay, but I know how to cope with it at this point. And the way I cope with it right now is the minute my temperature starts to go up or the moment my equilibrium starts to go out. For me, I find, because I don't like saltine crackers, they're just bland. But what I do like is Hawkins cheesies. Apparently, and I don't know, apparently that may be because they're sweeter. But the reality for me is it's just a couple of those will stabilize my system right off the hop. Now, it's not a doctor-approved medication. Okay, and I'm not overly concerned with whether the doctor approves it. The reality is it works. Okay, now I already know my sugar levels are a bit of a mess, which is why I'm looking into dietary changes to adjust that and get that out of track. But that's one of the things doctor wants to check is to see where my blood sugar is. Only they're going to turn around and go, you need to get this medication, get on it permanently. And I'm going to look at them and go, and it ain't going to happen. So for me, and that's only for me, ignoring the doctors, for me, is the way to go for the time being. In the meantime, I'm going to do some research, which is not what I'm good at, and look into ways of controlling blood sugar, of repairing the pancreas, and getting my body working properly. But I'm going to do it through dietary shift and exercise and living routine shift. That's the way that's going to go. Okay, because for me, that's the most effective method. The doctors can't keep up with my healing rate in any event, as it seems. But getting back to where I was, when you're looking at at altering the thought processes that you've got, regardless of how you came about them. Okay, everybody has a story. Everybody went through something before they got to where they are. Okay, every single one of us. Now, the reality is, okay, I came back to this world, to this lifetime, for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that, working together, we can make this a better world. Okay, we can alter the path that society is following right now. And rest assured, right now it's following a pretty black path. It's been down this road before. I do not see the purpose in going down it again. However, it seems a lot of people do. Okay, yes, I spend a lot of time taking my glasses off and putting them back on. By the way, if you like the video, give us a thumbs up and do so, give us a thumbs up. It would be appreciated. And apparently it does help the YouTube algorithm as well. Don't ask how that works. That part of technology I'm still at a hoop on. But do subscribe to the channel because there's a lot of information coming out. We do talk about a lot of different things. Okay, when you're looking at the way your mind is working and what you're focusing on, ask yourself this. Are you focusing on things that you have that are no longer of any viable use? Okay, for instance, maybe you grew up in an abusive home, in a home where you did not feel wanted, did not feel welcome, whatever, and now you're on your own. Now you've got a choice. You can continue using that abusive situation you grew up in as a reason to treat people poorly. Or you can go, okay, I came out of that, I'm standing on my feet. Now I'm going to start treating people decently. Now you've got the choice of doing that. But it's your choice. It's not somebody else's, and nobody else has control over it. The only person, the only entity that has control over what you do or how you respond is you. You have the freedom of choice, the free will to do as you see fit. The question is, are you going to do that in order to help other people feel better, yourself included? Or are you going to do it as an excuse to be mean? As an excuse to bully? Okay, if you grew up as in being bullied, are you becoming now a bully yourself? And if so, is this because you're blaming other people and say, well, I've been conditioned to be that way? I don't argue the point. You probably have been. But you now have the choice as to whether you're going to continue behaving under that training. Now, I'm not the one to tell you what your path should be. Okay, but I am the one to point out that if you're not content with it yourself, then it is time to change it. And that's where I can come in. Okay, as I will point you in the right direction. I will point you in a direction that takes you away from the negative interaction. Okay, like, I get done this video, I'll get it posted. Then I've got to record some horoscopes so I can get them posted later. Okay, once I'm done those two, then I will go for a walk and I will get my exercise in, grab a quick bite to eat, and do a little bit more writing. These are just some of the goals that I've got for today. Okay, and I do start with a list of things that I've got to get organized. Okay, but you always keep this list to 15 minutes to tasks that are 15 minutes to half an hour in length. Okay, now I'm still suffering from vertigo apparently, which is annoying, but what the heck. Okay, this is one of those things that I've got to get a handle on. This is why I tell people I'm not perfect. But I started yesterday because I've got so many copies so many soft copies on the computer of the writing I've been doing that I'm going back and eliminating all of the negative, all of the stuff, all the extra copies from the past, checking to make sure that they're there, what they are, and then eliminating them. Okay, now some of the older ones I'm hanging on to simply because if I require them, I'll utilize them in the way of proving that this is stuff I've had around forever. Okay, but that's the only reason to hang on to it. Okay, but I'm making sure the file chain names get changed so that I'm only working on a current one. That way I don't have to try and figure out which ones work. Okay, now the reality behind it is when you're looking at the way your mind is working, it's very much the way the computer is. Take a look at the thought processes that you're operating under and ask yourself, are these functional? Now, I mentioned the forward, and I've done this multiple times. Forwards to put in your office, in your kitchen, on your fridge door. And I personally recommend on the front door, on the main door that you come in. Okay, I am worth it. Those 4 words are the 4 most powerful words in any language that I've ever come across this lifetime. Okay, but by going through the different files at this point, I've eliminated a staggering amount of information that is no longer useful. As in old files I built gift certificates for my business before. I've just yesterday deleted the old copies. They were built way back and they are no longer required. If I desire to do them again, I'll sort that out then. Quite frankly, there's a stationery company, an online stationery company that I do use, and I am quite content with what they've done, so I'll just keep doing it. Okay. This is what I mean by working with others. They've already got the setup for it. I don't have to go through and teach myself how to do it effectively. Okay. They all already do it well. So I don't see the point in taking the time to try and do better than they do at that aspect. It doesn't interest me that much. And yes, it'll cost me a little more money than doing it on my own, but it'll cost me a whole lot less headaches. Okay, this is the same thing as that one bill I've been talking about. The one that the company has literally charged it erroneously. Well, they did it illegally. Let's be honest. I told them don't charge it. They did. Okay, now since I don't have any idea where I would find the proof of what was said, because I didn't record it ever. Okay, I didn't record. I never recorded the phone call, and that's how the statement was made. And I know they will. I have no doubt they will have changed it. Right. So what I've decided is this: am I going to pay the bill and get it off my deck? The answer is yes. But I'm going to do it my way, which means I'll be calling them and going, okay, I want to talk to a manager. I do not want to talk to a front end aside from this is who I am. Now put me through to somebody that I can talk to. And I know they're going to go, well, we've got to do it first. No, you don't, because you're either put me through or I'm hanging up. Okay, it's not really that big of an issue to me. I've been ignoring it this long. I'll continue. Right. But the reality is that what they did, I told them do not charge it. They did. Only I can't prove it otherwise, and there's no way going to court over it to try and get, or going to a lawyer to get it sorted out makes any functional sense. I'm going to spend more on the lawyer than I will on them. So I'm just going to deal with it that way. But this is the way I'm choosing to deal with it on my terms. Do I feel like I'm getting shafted? Absolutely. But it's the lesser of two evils to me. So I will be dealing with that probably once I get back from lunch. As a matter of fact, that's probably a good time to do it. So I'm looking at all of these things and going, this is the way my life is going to go. This is the changes in thought process that I'm working with for my benefit. Remember, karmic law number 1, be true to yourself first. Okay. I think it was Barbara Streisand back in the late 60s, early 70s that sang a song, that produced a song called I Did It My Way. Now, I may be mistaken on that. The artist may be different. So don't necessarily take my word for it. That's just the rules and the operation I'm going under. Now, in case you're wondering what I'm doing here, and it takes a little longer at this point, but the only way I'm going to get it done is by actually practicing with it. I used to write extremely quickly with my left hand. Okay, but after the stroke, that kind of went the way of the dodo bird. But the only way I'm going to get it to work is by actually doing it. So, I've decided that starting effective immediately, the only way I'm going to get better at writing with it is to start training the hand again. Okay. Now I was talking to one person that had a stroke, and they got to a point where they said, "I've come to realize this is as far as I'm getting, so I'm just going to accept it." Well, I'm not good at accepting much. Doctors diagnosed me dead. I didn't accept that. I walked out of the morgue, by the way. So I've decided that the only way I'm going to make this happen is if I actually get off my tail feathers and start working the muscle, getting the muscle retrained to be able to write. Okay. It's a pain in the neck. And I'm not going through the idea of let's do multiple A's and multiple circles. I'm just going to write and make sure I take my time with it to ensure that I get it and that it gets put out and that it gets put out properly. Okay. It takes a little longer. Okay. But in a nutshell, it will work better in the long run. It'll work a lot better to get where I'm heading for. But this is because I desire to get there. Now, like I said, all the best tools in the world are absolutely useless if you don't pick them up and use them. Okay, and everybody's in exactly the same point. You're right here, right now, and this is where we start changing things. Now, that said, because we're down to the half-hour mark here again, I'm going to bring this to a close. I will be back again tomorrow. Okay. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.